Okay, so this emphasis on belief, we're talking about belief and why it's such a Christian thing to focus on belief, to say, I started this morning believing, and so I was a Christian, and then, at noon, I said, no, I just don't believe anymore, and then I stopped being a Christian, and then around 5 o'clock, I was like, okay, no, my crisis of faith is over. I'm back in being a Christian again. This is really just a really sort of specifically Christian way of looking at the world. Religion, most world's religions don't work like that. It's not it's not acceptable to say, oh, because I stopped believing, I stopped being a member of that group. So most societies around the world don't do this. Your religious identity is far more complicated than the total of the formal propositions that you currently give assent to. And religions are defined as far more complex systems than merely quote unquote beliefs, right? There's other stuff going on apart from beliefs. There's practices, there's institutions, there's actions, there's all sorts of other things that we do in this world and think and feel. There are numerous atheistic religions. I mean, Buddhism itself doesn't require belief in any kind of deity, and it's one of the major world religions. Um, so religion can't really be defined as belief in a god or even in many gods. Belief is faulty, and God is faulty as a test for is this part of religion. So this is really hard to get away from. Even one of the first definitions of this textbook for culture identified it as beliefs and practices. Beliefs and practices is a theological dualism right out of Protestant Christian theology, even though social scientists would hate to admit it sometimes, especially American-based social scientists, think that it's obvious that beliefs and practices are a perfectly defendable dyad. So where belief does not matter, I don't understand this. Sorry, I'm just going to skip that part. Where he's talking about Hinduism and the duality of enlightenment versus non-enlightenment. How is that not another duality? I mean, it's okay for Hindus to believe it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it it if you take away Christian dualities and replace them with Hindu dualities, you're not really. I mean, you've decentered Christianity, and that's probably a good thing for students. But I'm not sure you're really getting anywhere technically, and with regard to social analysis. In any case, the cosmological function. So here we hit these four functions again. The cosmological function illustrating how religion works. Cosmologically, different religions result in radically different views of the world, and so it takes us to Bali, Indonesia, where the people are Hindu. Let me throw this up. It's always good to. Whoa, there you can see what I'm listening to. Bali. So here's Bali. Bali is a province of Indonesia. It's an island off the coast of Java, which is another island. Come on, give me my zoom button. There we go. Zooming out. Indonesia. Here's Indonesia. There's some big islands, um, and then some smaller islands. And most Indonesians are Muslim. It's one of the biggest Muslim populations on the planet, out of 200 million people, and probably three-quarters of them are Muslims. Um, but it has lots of other religions as well. There's Christians, there's Buddhists, there's various indigenous religions of small-scale hunter-gatherers, and other world religions, and one of these is Hinduism. So even though this is right next to a big Muslim island, this is a Hindu island. So the people down here are closest to these people over here uh, in religion. Isn't that weird? Sri Lanka is Buddhist. Uh, it has a Hindu minority. India is Hindu and has a Buddhist minority. And here are Hindus down here in Bali. Okay, so Hinduism, and then they have their economy is based on these irrigated and terraced rice farms. So it's somewhat hilly, and they have lakes, and then they have water running down these irrigation canals and spreading out to flood the rice paddies that are terraced down the side of the hill. So we have water canals and temples, relationship between the canal and the temple. There's a shrine at the water's entrance to each farm. So you have your little rice paddy here, and where the water of course comes in to flood it, and at that point, at the point of that rice, the water entering your rice paddy, there's a little shrine there. Um, and then everyone in town connects to the same bigger canal, and there's a temple at the town's connection to that canal, and then that canal goes through the community, and each little town feeds off of that main canal, and so where that canal joins to the big canal, there's to the main line, a couple miles away, or 10 miles away, however far it is. Then there's a major temple there um, at the point of that connection. And then finally at the lake, Batur, there's a main temple to Devi Danu, the supreme goddess of water, who is providing all of the water to everyone else. And so all of these minor temples are all sort of connected to the main temple. The calendars, we have 210 days broken into 30 weeks of 7 days and 6 months of 35 days to match the growth cycle of the rice. So this is how the rice is growing. So that's sort of an economic calendar. Then there's a lunar calendar connected to the moon cycles. This is maybe more related to religion. Um, and then you have an extra month every 2 or 3 years. The lunar cycle follows behind the solar set calendar about 11 days each year. So if you want to keep up the lunar calendar with the changing seasons, then you have to insert 30 days every year, 33 days, something like that, every 3 years. Or you can just leave it and it'll just fall farther and farther behind, as the Islamic calendar does. They're just completely done with the solar calendar for their religion. Their religion follows a different calendar, and it just goes off every 30 years. It makes a completely full cycle around the year, and it's a year gets lapped. And then there's the regular Gregorian calendar, the third one, which is what everyone in the world uses because of global modernity being connected to European colonialism. So is this mindless superstition? Should we just get rid of it? And that's what the Indonesian government tried to do. Of course, Indonesian government dominated by either Muslims or technocrats, none of whom would be very hospitable to this Hindu religion. And so they canceled the priests in the temples in the 1970s to be more scientific. Almost immediately, pests and diseases went up and yields went down. So they used pesticides to kill the diseases, and these pesticides poisoned the fish. The fish were food sources for the people. They were using the fish to kill the pests, but then they were also killing and eating the fish to provide protein for themselves. And so everyone's mad because they can't get fish anymore, and the pests aren't really being controlled that well. And so after a few years of this experiment, they said, fine, we give up. We'll put the priests back in charge and let you guys just keep doing your thing because the methods worked. So that's, we can see a cosmological function, a function that relates to a view of the world that is radically different from Islam or from modernity, but it still functions. It's still a system that works. Sociological function is number 2. This is the idea that religions often reflect and support the values of the society. For example, many world religions have found that when Americans practice those religions, when the people Americans convert to those religions, or practitioners of those religions immigrate to America and become American, and then start, subtly transforming their religions. When this happens, they look more and more like Protestant Christianity. Protestant Christianity, of course, develops in Northern Europe in response to capitalism. It comes about the same time, and so you have radical freedom, choice, market-driven decision making, and that's Protestant Christianity. At its sort of purest form is congregational church organization, where each church is completely independent and there's a sort of a knife fight in a phone booth going on to attract members, and all members are seen as sort of free decision makers who can decide to go here and not there, and so you can attract them with flashier shows, or or cooler looking auditoriums, or better music, or more fiery preaching, or whatever. All this competition is very capitalistic. And basically, the churches, Eastern Orthodox churches, or Buddhist or Hindu temples, or Muslim mosques, Jewish synagogues that end up being founded in the United States by Americans, either descended from immigrants, but fully American now, or founded by American converts, all tend to look Protestant after 4 or 5 generations. Uh, you've got these Catholic churches, and they're going full bluegrass, or they're going old Latin, or you've got these mosques that are like got the more fiery preacher, or the synagogue that has the better music. Um, all to draw in the because everyone's free, right? It's not like back in old Europe, where you belong to the diocese, and you belong to the community, and that was the church in the village that the government supports, and so that's where you go. This is the Friday mosque for your community, and so that's where you go. In back in the old world, but in America, you go where you want to go because you are American, and you make those decisions, and you buy what you want to buy, and you eat what you want to eat, and you like the music better there, so you're going to go there even though you skip past 15 temples on the way there. You're going to that Hindu temple because they're the cool ones. And so we can see that basically, according to Durkheim, every society's true God is always the society itself.